Okay. So in the last session, we completed purchasing basic configuration and we assigned required roles also, but we didn't mark it as a completed. This I'm going to set done. So along with those roles, assign one more role. I think we didn't assign that role in the last session. The role is buyer role. To create the purchase orders, that role also required. Assign role called as buyer to user. Okay, if you don't assign buyer role, you cannot create the purchase orders. You don't have access to that functions also. So just add role called as buyer. Okay, I just did this assignment offline. Otherwise, if I start doing now, it will take some more time to synchronize and to work that relevant function. So I did that, but in your case, just make a note. So we assign procurement and to purchasing related roles to this user to work on the procurement process. Primarily, our target is creating the purchase orders. Along with those roles, assign buyer role to this user since this user is going to work on purchasing. Okay, this is additional point. You can make a note. Done. So say including buyer role, we assigned all required roles to the user. Now we have that approvals also ready. So now we'll see the process of creating the purchase order and approving it. We'll create the purchase order. We'll create the invoice by matching with PO. We'll see this now. Fine. So go to navigator. If you go to procurement section, there you can find one task called as purchasing. Just click on purchasing task. And what are the approval limits we have here? So less than 50,000. Okay. And go to task panel. 1 second. Yep. Go to task panel. Here say create order. Just select create orders function. Create orders. Okay, the document style system is defaulting as a purchase order and procurement BUS, same Fusion US business unit based on our setups. Thus all are getting defaulted and our supplier name is Fusion supplier 2. Right, select it. Site is defaulting. So buyer name is Fusion user. Right, say create. So here you can provide default ship to location. If you think ship to is mandatory as per process. So for build 2 we have Fusion. So search with Fusion. So ship to should be to our inventory. So this is the PO header information. Under terms, payment terms are defaulting. Now we'll go to the PO lines. Just click on add row. So we set to line type as a goods to the option, so the same is defaulting. Now I'm not going to select any items since we didn't create any items. So I'll write as a some service. The category is mandatory. You can select. Say I'll go with a miscellaneous category. of measurement I'm taking as a say each quantity. I'll say 1. Price is so less than 50,000, so I'll go with the 25,000. Okay, $25,000. Okay, now you can go to schedules. Requested delivery date. If you think this information is required, you can enter say by tomorrow. Just setting promise date and requested delivery date to tomorrow date. Done. Now go to distributions, and here PO charge account. See here the PO charge account you can select through manual process also, but remaining accounts whatever required that should get defaulted from rules. For PO charge and other accounts also we define the account rules. Now system will be defaulting from there only. So what we can do is just click on save. Based on the rules what we define, system will be defaulting PO charge account you can see here, and along with that if you select this row, if you click on edit, the other accounts also, PO variance account, PO accrual account, all system will default from the rules which we defined. Okay, so anyway, just we created purchase order. Now we have to submit this PO for approvals. Click on submit.
Lakshman,
Yeah.
where you added these value set values, actually, which value set we added?
Okay. Yeah, fine. I'll explain. Can you, if you don't mind, can you mute? I can hear a lot of noise. Yeah. The value set values. Okay. Value set values are added in the corporate account, but the environment which you are using and whatever the classes I am taking to are totally different. Okay. You might be trying to find the values within the same, but you don't find. Environments are different. Okay. Sharath, did you get the point?
Yes, I got it.
Yeah, yeah. That's it.
So,
Yeah. So so now we'll go and submit it for approval. Just click on submit. So the document number 1 was submitted for approval. Say okay. Okay. So it will come in this notification list. Take some time. You can find from here also. Attention required. Let's wait for a couple of minutes. So now you can see 10 notification. That means we got the PO notification also. Just click on this notification. Here you can see action required. Approval for purchase order 1. You can just click on this. Since this buyer, now we can call this Fusion user as a buyer, since working on this user is working for purchasing. So this buyer has a approval limit up to 50,000. Now this PO only for $25,000. Now here we have actions, approve or reject, or else we have a different other options, reassigning, and you can this user can suspend. Okay, these are different actions this user can perform. Now for our testing, just I'm going with the approve. Just click on approve. Done. This PO got approved. You can go on to verify the status. Go to navigator. Under procurement, select task called as purchasing. Go to manage orders. Taking much time here. Just please wait, it is taking time. Okay, I'm just going to refresh it. Go to task panel and select task called as manage orders. Yep. Here you can give the supplier name as Vision Supplier. Order number is 1. Here it's, you can see directly. It's defaulted. So the status is open. Okay. It's not like in progress or pending approval. The status open in the sense it's got approved. That's what you can understand. So now we'll go to the payables and we'll create invoice against this PO. Just switch to payables. Select invoice workbench. Go to task panel. Select task called as create invoice. I'm sorry. So here, sorry. So now we are creating invoice by matching with the PO, right? So you can provide the PO number. So PO number 1 against Fusion Supplier 2, right? Select it. Then supplier and all other information will get defaulted. Okay, invoice number you can enter. Invoice amount say $25,000. So now we don't need to enter the lines, right? When we match, the line system will copy from PO. So here here we have options. Sorry. Here these options we use for just to do the corrections. This is just to go with the receipt and all. Here you can use this option, match invoice levels. When you see in EBS, and you look at in EBS when you are doing the matching, okay, when you are doing the matching, we'll be selecting that match action, whether you are going to match with a PO or receipt or invoice. but here that sort of options we don't have. So if you are going, what we are going to do the correction or you are going to match, based on that you will be selecting. If it is a correction, these options. If it is a matching, this you can select. Okay, just select option as a match invoice lines. Okay, then just click on go. So this is the PO information available based on header level. We given already details. So select the same one quantity and the same unit price. Then say apply. Say okay. The lines will be copied to PO lines. Sorry, invoice lines. And you can just say validate. So validated. And you can submit for accounting. Okay, yeah. If you want to see the accounting, you can see from here. Okay, so that's all about invoice creation matching with the PO. Yeah.
Question:
We
what is
complete.
like there was correction invoice lines.
Sorry. See, correction is
During
nothing
that,
but if you want to reduce the invoice amount, if you want to change some invoice amount with some reason where you enter wrong amount or anything, that you can do as a correction. It's nothing but generally with the concept as debit or credit memo, what we do that only we call as correction. Okay, apart from that, you may go ahead directly, you may go and do without rising debit or credit also, you can go and do some corrections against the lines, whatever you have within the invoice. So, but in case of EBS, they given separate tab to do that. But here, through that match options they given, we can go and do the corrections for that. Okay, fine. So that's all about purchasing. You understand? So we done in GL point of view. Just we completed just primary ledger part. Okay, now we'll go to the GL later, and AP almost completed. What else pending? See here. So setups almost all we completed. Okay. Yeah, the payment method also we created, right? In case of for this bills payables, we done this, right? Completed bills payables or not? Yeah, bills payables configuration. That means we did we created our own payment method also. I think payables lookups we have to see. Okay, payable lookups. Just we'll go and see this. And before that, PO based invoice creation. Just now we completed. And as a part of setups to understand payables lookups. Okay, we'll go and see the task. How to define the lookups for payables. It's not mandatory how to do this setup from your project. You can do outside of the project also. Go to setup and maintenance. Sorry. So the task name is manage payables lookups. Okay, manage payables lookups. Fine. You want to define the lookups for payables, right? Just you can select the module as a payables, and if you know specific lookup values for which lookup you want to create values, you can give the name. Say here lookup type is nothing but lookup name code, or else you can take as a code. Say if you want to create a pay group, I'll say pay group, search for that. Here we have a lookup type, nothing but lookup name. Okay, so meaning is valid pay groups. It's the same as EBS, the naming convention also they given. There also you can see as a valid pay groups. Now these are the different values, lookup values created for pay group. If you want to create one, you can go and create it. So what you can do is click on new. Pay group name I'm giving as say Fusion foreign suppliers. Just written as foreign. Okay. So before that, we know the purpose, right? What is the purpose of pay group? It's all about to group the suppliers, right? So I can have a pay groups like foreign suppliers. I can have something service based supplier or material suppliers or foreign suppliers or domestic suppliers. Sorry. So this is how we can have a supplier classification. The classifications we may create through pay group. This pay group we can assign to which suppliers falls into foreign suppliers. For all the foreign suppliers, we can assign this pay group. So when you are making the payment, if you select the pay group, system will pick the only foreign suppliers where this pay group is assigned. This is one of the criteria when we are processing the payments. But anyway, we'll see the process how to just work on this. We'll create the pay group in this way. Okay, just given the meaning. I'll take the same as a description. And say save and close. Now you can go to supplier. Click on search. Okay. Just I'll be selecting here. I have option to select. Here you can assign. Okay, this supplier it belongs to which pay group. Created a Fusion, right? Fusion foreign supplier. That's all. So we know like when we are creating the invoice, the same pay group will be defaulted. If you want to override, you can override. Just I don't create invoices, I'll take you through that form. So I create invoice. Okay. Since we selected this site, system will default the same pay group. If you want to see, you can see from here. So sorry, here go to manage installments. The pay group field you can find in the installments level. Pay group. Okay, the system is defaulting. That means automatically this invoice will falls into this pay group. If you want to override, you can override. So like when you are making the payment, pay group is one of the criteria to process the payments. So here you may select the pay group, so that if I want to process that pay group I assign to 4 suppliers. If I want to process the payment only for the 4 suppliers, I can select the pay group here. That's all. So this pay group is assigned to how many suppliers? Only that supplier invoice only will get selected based on selection. Okay. So that's all about pay group to understand. Okay. So through lookups, we can create predefined values. The first point is what is the purpose of lookups means. It's nothing but to define the predefined values which we can use in the process. Okay, we can use the lookup values. One of the lookup name is pay group. That's what we tested. This functionality remains same as EBS, no changes we can see. So done in the setup part, nothing is pending, and concepts also done almost all. And we have BA reports and OTBA reports. I just mentioned these concepts as a part of payables, but we know these are very common. So this BA and OTBA reports are applicable for all the modules. We'll see these concepts a bit later. Okay, if we are very specific to payables, we can complete now, but it's a common, right? Common features for all the applications. We'll see later. Now we are in the very first module, so no need to work on it. We'll see this bit later. Okay, that's all about payables. You can treat payables. Done with that. Okay. Somebody asked the payment formats and all. I'll take you through that. Along with that, I want to add few more points also. I'll show you that also. Just I made a note. I'll be covering that. Okay. So that's all about payables, and we're done with the AP and purchasing also. We completed basic. Now we'll just jump into receivables application. Okay. We'll start with the receivables. First, we'll focus on the core modules. We're done with the AP. The PO, it's not a core, like it's a basic. Anyway, we covered. Then we'll see receivables, cash management, fixed assets. Then, before we jump into GL, we'll complete this fusion tax as well as fusion expense. These two modules also will complete before we go to. We'll jump into general ledger application. Finally, we'll go to GL and we'll complete this course. Okay, we'll see the receivables configuration. And before we talk about receivables configuration, what is the purpose of receivables? What is the purpose of account receivables? Like the basically with account receivables, we can maintain the customer balances. When you say customer balances, customer outstanding balances. As a activities, as a primary activities within the receivables, we can create the sales invoices based on the sales orders, or you may create manually direct invoices also. You can create whatever it may be, the dependency will create the sales invoices. The moment we get the payment from customer, we'll record the receipt. That is a very primary activities which you perform in the receivables. Once we get the payment from customer, that will be recording as the receipt. The same will be remitting to the bank. That is additional activity any will be covering within the course. We'll see those how to remit and all. The primarily we have to understand the say sales invoice creation and receipt creation. In other words, you can say will create the bills. Okay, we'll be billing to the customer. The billing information only we are going to create as a sales invoice, and we'll create the receipt once we get the payment from customer. So to complete receivables configuration, okay, these are the different tasks we have to perform. When you compare these setups with EBS, everything same as this. Okay, no changes you can find. Only one additional setup you can find, that is nothing but reference data set you have to create for customer site. Okay, we cannot use common set or enterprise set, which is a seeded predefined in the even fresh environment. Also, in every fresh environment we'll have only two reference data sets. Those are common and enterprise. But in the system, okay, in this system when you are doing the configuration for payables, you can select common set or any set. But when you talk about receivables, especially for customer site definition time, you cannot use common set, because the site you cannot map with the very commonly. The sub customer site should be specific to the BUs based on the assignments which you do. That is the reason for each BU you have to maintain the separate common set you can maintain, or else you can create one and you can map with the multiple. But this would be the mandatory setup when we are doing the customer site definition. Okay, without creating your own reference data set, you cannot create the customer site. This is the point I want to highlight here. Okay, let's talk about let's do these setups and all. So what I'll do is we'll talk about what is the purpose of the setup, and we'll go on doing the system, or else we'll talk about all what is the purpose of all the setups, and we'll do one by one. Okay, the first setup is system options. Okay, the same name, the naming convention same in EBS also. When you talk about receivable system options configuration, so we know with the receivables system options we can control the receivables related transaction process. I mean to say, transaction process means the receivables functionality related controls you can set very high level. Okay, with the system options we can control the, or we can say we can set the behavior of receivables application usage for specific business unit. And when you talk about transaction types in receivables, if you want to create any transaction in receivables, if you want to create any transaction type is mandatory. Without transaction type you cannot create the transaction. What is the use of the transaction type? With the transaction type you can define the process of transaction, how the transaction can be created, how it should not be created. The meaning is, when you are creating the transaction, whether within the transaction you want to enter the positive amounts or negative amounts, if you create the transaction you want to print for billing purpose or not. And again, if you create any transaction against with some customer related customer, so the customer balances you want to update or not, all these kind of different controls you can set when you are creating the transaction type, that we'll see in the system. But simple point is, to create any transaction the receivables, transaction type is mandatory, where you can set certain controls related to transaction which you record. And to generate the numbering for each and every transaction source is required. Okay, if you are going to create any transaction by using the transaction type, the transaction source is mandatory to generate the numbering for the transactions. The other setup is auto accounting configuration. When you create the transaction, the receivables system has to create accounting. Say in payables, system is creating accounting. Whatever you give in the distribution set or a distribution, manual distribution, that it will take as debit. And if you provide liability account from supplier side, it will derive from supplier side liability account, or else directly it will be taken from common options. The liability account it will be crediting. That means the accounting is happening automatically based on the specifications you given in payables. In the same way, to create accounting entries automatically in the receivables also, you have to set up some rules. Those rules only you can set up by using the auto accounting rules. Within the auto accounting rules, you will be specifying which code combination system has to take when you perform the transaction. You can specify some constant rule, or else you can specify from which source system has to take the auto accounting, that you can set up. Like in EBS, we'll set from the different sources. So same sources are remain in Fusion also. Transaction type, memo line, okay, customer site or sales rep. These are the different sources, or else another option always we have as a constant. And payment terms, same meaning. To calculate the due dates and discounts, we can use the payment terms. And statement cycles, So how often you want to send the statements to the customer, that specification you can set through cycles for which business unit, what cycle you are following to send the statements. And when you create the customer, we have to specify who will be acting as a collector for the customer related payments collection purpose. We'll create the collector who will be collecting the payment from the customer, and which we can map to the particular sub customer definition. And customer profile class, it's all about to group the customers, to group the customer based on their different, based on the customer profile you can create the customer profile classes. So when we are creating customer, we have to assign so payment term, statement cycle, and collect it to the customer. Not only this, there are a lot of information which we need to map with the specific customer based on the profile of customer. So what we can do is with the profile class, we can group all these definitions. Not only this, there are many other definitions. Okay, we can group and we can create the customer profile class instead of going and assigning the payment term, statement cycle, and collect information one by one to the customer. We can group all these into profile class. If you assign the profile class, all will get assigned to the customer automatically. I'm just taking these simple definitions are enough to create the customer profile class, so I taken only this. Otherwise the credit limit, and there are many other options, many other points to be considered when you talk about the customer profile class. The other one is I'm sorry, somebody. Yep, thanks. So then we'll create the customer and the customer address, or you can call a site. The same concept like when you talk about customer information is global. You can create the customer information can be accessed from anywhere. But when I talk about sites, the sites, whatever the sites will create, those will be mapping with a particular business unit, right? So customers, right away you can go and create the customers. And when I talk about the customer sites, while you are creating the customer site, you require separate reference data set. You cannot use whatever predefined in the system environment which comes as along with the product. Okay, I mean, so predefined reference data sets you cannot use. Example, common set or enterprise set, those you cannot use for customer site definition. To create the customer site, first you have to create the reference data set for customer site. By using that reference data set only, you can create the customer address. And remit to address, when you talk about customer site, we know like customer site will have a specific purpose, but very primarily the customer site will have a purpose of ship to or bill to. Customer can inform us where we have to ship the material or to where we have to send the bill, but ship to may not be mandatory all the time. If you take example of services, if you are going to provide the services to the customer, there is no scope of delivering the services to so and so location. It's all about will give the services. There is no location, specific location we may not require. And bill to is mandatory all the time. In case of goods or services, bill to will become mandatory. When we are creating the customer site, we'll just go through it. And remit to address is nothing but this is our supplier address. When we are just working on receivables, let's treat ourselves as we are acting as suppliers. So this is supplier address where customer has to send the payments. It's very simple. Once we give this remit to address to our customer, the customer will be creating in their books in the supplier definition as a payment site. So memo lines, if you want to capture, if you are going to create, if you are going to provide services to the customers, the services all you can define by using the memo lines. Simple point is for non-inventory items, you can use the memo lines. If you are going to deal with the items, and all items you can maintain within the inventory, and you can map that inventory with the order management and receivables. You can access the items from order management or receivables. You can create the sales invoices. But if you are dealing with the items where you can maintain the items you can, sorry, if you are dealing with the services, if you are dealing with the services, all the services you can define in the system by using the memo lines. And if you want to derive the accounting revenue derivation from the based on the memo lines also, you can set it up. That is a part of auto accounting setup. And receivable activities, the receivables will perform the basic major activities called as transaction creations and receipts. Apart from that, there could be some kind of miscellaneous activities which will be doing as a part of the actual standard process. Say, for example, you want to give some discount to the customer, and you want to do some write-off. Customer is not paying, say bad debts we have that you have to track in the system, or else there is some miscellaneous amounts lying in the system as a unapplied amounts that you want to write off. So in those scenarios, you can use the receivables activities So this is the activity which we do in the system apart from the standard activities which we do as a some receipt creation or transaction creation, whatever you call. Okay. Simply if you want to capture the discounts, say earned discount or unearned discount, or if you bad debts related information, if you want to capture, you can use the receivable activities, where we'll specify the account against which activity you are doing. Activity related account will be mentioning in the receivable activity, then that we'll see in the process. We'll anyway we'll see that we'll create. So what are the different mandatory receivable activities we have to create, we'll discuss when we are working on it. Receipt class and methods. Okay, with the receipt class, what we can do is you can set control over the process of receipt creation for specific method of payment, customer payments. So you are going to receive the payment from customer through check, so you'll be creating as a receipt method as a check. This is the same you can call as payment method also, nothing but customer payment method. When we are going to receive the payment from the customer through check, what process we are going to follow, that process you can set up by using the receipt class. That means how you are going to create receipt. You are going to create receipt through manual process or automatic process. And once you receive the payment from the customer, that you want to remit to bank or not, after remitting the payment to bank, you want to do the reconciliation or not, all such kind of controls you can set by using the receipt class. As we know, receipt class is, it's like a global definition, it's not specific to any business unit. The receipt class is common definition, it can be shared across, but method will be specific to BU. Okay, so method will be specific to BU. The same way, that means simple point is to create the receipt we require receipt class and a method. However, we require transaction type. Okay, we require transaction type to create the transaction. The same way, to create the receipt we require receipt class and method. Here to generate the numbering for the transactions, we are using the transaction source. The same way, to create the numbering, if you want to generate the numbering for receipt uh, receipts, you can use the receipt source. For receipt numbering purpose you can use, but it's not mandatory all the time. Generally receipt source usage we'll see in the receipt batch creation time only. That we'll see detail level when you are working on the system. And other point is, we'll once we complete all these setups, we'll go through the role template whatever we have for receivables. Okay, basically in the receivables primarily you see that billing related, revenue related. Okay, and uh, I mean customer payment related roles you can see. We'll go through it. We'll go to the APM, and through APM what is the role template we have for receivables we'll see, and what are the job roles we have for receivables as a seeded. We'll go through it. Then we know, like based on BU definition, system will create the data roles. All the data roles will assign to the user and will submit LDAP, and we'll open the receivables periods. Then we can start working on the process. The same whatever I given in the course content, I copied and pasted into Excel, so that we can keep tracking the status what we completed and which is pending, so that that will be easy for us to work on it. So the same I copied and pasted from, sorry, from the course content whatever we shared with you. Okay, done. So we'll see these setups one by one. The first setup is we have to configure system options. Okay, we have to configure system options. So go to implementation project, click on user, and say just click on setup and maintenance, and then click on implementation projects. We know this process very well. So since we saved here, it is displaying here. Otherwise, we have to again click on overview, right? You can open from here, or else you can go to overview, where you can see only assigned projects only. From here, which you saved, you can see, but from here you can see whatever assigned. Then open this project. So now search for system options. Then click on search. Just drag it. You can see the task as manage receivable system options. Click on this task. Here is the task, manage receivable system options. Then click on go to task icon. See, few setups, it takes some time when you are opening the first time. Generally, as a part of our project, we are opening this first time, but next time when you are trying to open, it will open uh, just a bit faster compared to this time what is taking first time. Fine. So now here we are going to just set up system options for our business unit. So click on create. Don't try to search for the business unit because we don't have any system options for our BU. You have to click on create. Select your business unit. So our BU name is Fusion US Business Unit. So system is defaulting the ledger. Okay. Now these all are the controls or defaults for our business unit which we are going to set. Already we discussed the purpose of system options is to set the control or default information for the specific business unit. So these are all just controls you can set based on the checkboxes, the function related, and you may set defaults which need to be defaulted down the line of the process which you'll be doing within the receivables application. But we'll go through what are the mandatory fields. We need to understand all these each and every checkbox or field. I'm setting just application rule set as a pro rate all. Discount base is based on the invoice amount. Okay, and here we have a few mandatory accounts. We'll provide those mandatory accounts here. Okay, just I'm selecting sales tax here. And just provide the relevant account, cross currency rounding account. Okay, so anyway we know very well like which account need to be taken into which field because clearly the label name is written here. Based on that you can select the right account. For now, just to complete the setup, I'm copying and pasting the same account. Okay, we are not going to analyze account level, right, the balances and all. Just we are trying to understand the process setups and process, so that won't become an issue at all. So tax invoice printing option, I'll say total tax only. So if anything is mandatory, you can set it up. Sorry. So under customer, you can set the grouping rule as a default and the maximum memory bytes. The log file also I'm setting the same. This is for auto invoice. You don't find something new which you are setting up in case of receivable system options also we have, but those all managed within the 5 tabs. But here you can see everything in the 2 tabs, within the 2 tabs only. So what generally we set in the EBS, sorry. So what generally we set in the EBS system option, the same we are setting here. But there you can see most of the fields related information will be defaulting, but here you have to set this sort of fields also. So we given whatever the mandatory fields input is required, and you can go to the next tab called as cash processing. Okay, just will go with the mandatory fields. Here chargeback due date, what chargeback due date system has to default. I'm selecting as a receipt date only. Okay, but will be changing that you cannot decide by setting here, right? So these accounts and invoice for commitment, I'll say 100. Okay, here the first point we have to understand, we have to complete the system options. Okay, the same, what is the meaning of system options and options we have in the EBS, the same options we can see here also. So that's all about setting up system options with the basic information. So we're done with the task. And one more point, anytime if you want to go and change the system options, the process is this same. Where we have that system options. You see now it's opening the immediate page. You can select here your BU and you click on go. Then the record will display. You select it, click on edit, that will open. You can do the changes. Okay, that's all. Now we'll create the transaction types. So what are the transaction types we have? We'll go and create the transaction types for that. So search for task called as transaction types. So here you can take that task name as manage transaction types. Then click on go to task icon. Click on create. Fine. So in case of payables, hardly we are using that reference data set for payment terms. But in receivables, you can see in many definitions. Now here you can select transaction type set, nothing but reference data set. This transaction type you want to group into which reference data set? I'll take into common set. I'll type here common. Common set and select your legal entity. It will type it, it will fetch Fusion USA legal entity and the transaction type. See, these are the different type of invoices we can create for each and every your class will be having. Yeah. So these are the different we have, like invoice, debit memo, credit memo, chargeback, bills, receivables, and all we have. I'm just going to create for invoice, just for identification purpose. Anyway, this will be specific to our BU only, because since we are going to map with the BU. Okay, I'm giving the name as transaction type as Fusion invoice transaction type. Okay, Fusion invoice I'm giving the same. I'm just taking as a description. Now against by using this transaction type, what we want to create? We want to create the invoice, nothing but sales invoice. So transaction status, if you want to use this transaction type to record the transaction, should be open. I'm selecting the same. And creation sign. So these are all we call as controls, right? So for this transaction type, these are all the controls. So creation sign, since it's invoice, okay, we can go with the positive only, or else we have negative or any sign. But for invoice, positive sign only we have to use. So generate bill, it's nothing but an EBS. We can say print option. Okay, print, do not print, will be having the values here. The print option they given as a generate bill. Generate bill is nothing but print bill. You want to print or not, say yes. So that system will give the option to print the transaction which you are going to create with this transaction type. Okay, done. And if you just have a create memo, like you are going to generate the automatically, if you want to create the create memo against this transaction, you can map the create memo here, but for now not required. We'll see that later. So that's all, and these are the other controls with this transaction type. If you create transaction, that information you want to transfer to GL or not. And the other options, open receivables, nothing but if you, with this transaction type, if you create the transaction, that amounts should get updated in the system or not against the customer. All these controls we can set. This is all about transaction type definition. So this we are taking into common set. But this transaction type, if you require for which business unit, you can assign to that business unit. One transaction type can be assigned to multiple business units. Okay, but in case of EBS, when you are creating the transaction type, you will select the business unit operating unit and will create the transaction type. That means the transaction type you can use for only one operating unit, but here one transaction type can be assigned to multiple business units. Now we created business transaction type. This we have to assign to business unit. How to assign? Just click on create. It's nothing but assign. So this transaction type is required in which business unit? Select here. Fusion US business unit. And if you are going to set auto accounting, if you are going to set auto accounting to derive from the accounting entries from transaction type, you may provide here, otherwise it's not mandatory. This is same as EBS. Through auto accounting, if you want to derive the accounting, you can provide accounts here, otherwise directly you can go and set constant. In our case, let's test by setting the constant. Okay, I select it, then say, instead of clicking on save and close, I'll go with the option called as save and create another. If you go with the save and create another, these values it will save in the buffer. Okay, so that for next transaction type it will be easy for us to create. Say save and close, create another, create it. Now if I go to transaction type set, it's nothing but reference data set. I can see the value which I selected earlier here, common. Even legal entity also I can find in that way on top of the list. So here say we are going to create the credit memo. I'll say Fusion credit memo. So just you can copy and paste. So transaction class should be credit memo, and the status should be open to use, and for credit memo sign should be negative. And you want to generate the bill print, you want to print the credit memo also, that depending on your requirement you can set, generally set to yes. Okay, done. Now this credit memo you want to, this credit memo transaction you want to use in which business unit, you can go and assign to that BU. So Fusion US business unit, already BU level we assigned our primary ledger, right? Through business unit business functions. Okay, we assigned, so it's getting defaulted. Then say okay. Now again say save and create another. Select reference data set as a common set. Select Fusion USA legal entity and give the transaction type as Fusion say debit memo. Transaction class debit memo. Let's say open. Yes. So we know by default, as per standard functionality, debit memo status also, the sign also positive, which will be as per process what we use, right? So are done. We given the basic information, then assign this transaction type to specific BU. Now say save and create another. So common set. Select legal entity and we'll create now chargeback transaction type. So Fusion chargeback. Status set to open. When you say chargeback also positive sign. It is equal to invoice only. But depending on the scenario, it will be created. Any will be working on it. Yes, we want to generate the bill for this and assign this chargeback transaction type to specific BU. Okay, that's all. Like we don't require for bills payables with receivables and all. I'm not going to create for that. So then say save and close. And one more point here, when you look at the transaction classes, we don't have any deposit and a guarantee, but those functions are not available in the latest version, this release 11 also, that we may expect in the next release. But as of now we don't have anything. If at all client is looking for, we have to look for workaround. In terms of workaround also, it's a bit challenge for us. Okay, that's how we have to create the transaction types. So we created the required transaction types. Now we'll go and create the transaction sources for all those transaction types. Okay, for number generation, right? So here we have a task called as manage transaction sources. Manage transaction sources. Click on go to task icon. Okay, just click on create. So here also we have a reference data set. Okay, select same common set. I'll type here common set, which legal entity. Fusion USA legal entity. So name, I'll give the source name, transaction source name also as a Fusion Invoice, or you may write as a manual source and some importer depending on your requirement you can give it. But I'm just writing the name as Fusion Invoice transaction source. The same I'm copying as a description. And we know like we can have it. We have two sources. One is what are the transactions we create manually for that number generation. Other one is for importer transactions. Okay. Now we are going to create through manual process. So I'll select it. By default, system is taking manual. No need to change it. Then set from date. Taking today's date. Now here, last transaction number. I'll say last transaction number is 0. Then it should run the numbering from 1. And this number should get applicable for which transaction type. That transaction type you have to select here. I'll go with the fusion. That means when we create the transaction by using the fusion invoice transaction type, the system has to generate this sequence of number. Last transaction number is 0. That means the system will start from 1. Okay, this is a mapping we have to do. Then here say save and create another. Okay, see the field name is wrong. It is saying that it cannot be less than a minimum value of line number. See, they given last number means last number. If you give 0, it will start from 1. The function, the label name, whatever they given wrong. That means this should be next transaction number. I'll give 1. It will accept now then. Based on label we given, but reality that function is not working. That should not be lost. It should be next transaction number. Then 1 means that will work fine. Yep. So take the meaning as not lost. Next. That's how we can see how it's behaving. Okay. Select reference data set as a common set. Select your legal entity and create transaction source for say credit memo transaction. Say fusion credit memo source. Just copy and paste the same as the description. Then source type is yes manual. From date today's date. Here also it should start from 1. For which transaction type? Fusion credit memo transaction type. For this transaction type, this number system has to follow. Then say save and close, save and create another. Select reference data set as a common set. Select LE and name now will create for debit memo. I'll give name as fusion debit memo. Just copy and paste. Okay, type is manual. So what purpose we are creating the transaction source? For number generation. Based on transaction type, system has to generate the number for which transaction type, which number it has to follow. Again, for manual transactions or imported transactions, and for which business unit, all the specifications we are giving. Yeah. So here we have a name as Vision Debit Memo. For this transaction type, maybe system has to start from 101 in case of debit memo. Okay, that's all. Just we create a transaction sources for invoice, debit memo, and credit memo. For chargeback, we no need to create any transaction source. The predefined source we have, the same system will be using. Even if you create, system won't use it. So that's the reason we are not going to create for chargeback. For these three, enough. Sorry, from date we have to. Why they are not defaulting? Why they don't default here? Fine, save and close. Then we create a transaction sources for transaction number generation. This is to control receivables functionality or process. And for this is a transaction process controls and defaults, transaction types, transaction sources for transaction number generation for specific transaction types. Now we'll see the auto accounting configuration. So basically the auto accounting only specific to transactions, not for receipts. So when you create the transaction, system has to create the debit and credit lines. Okay, for that we can go and set up the rules from which source it has to take, or if you are planning to derive the constant combination, that also you can go and set. Basically two options. One is source based you can derive, or else constant values you can specify the same you can derive when you create the transaction. System will derive based on the definition. Okay, we'll go and just configure the auto accounting rules. Search for auto accounting rules. The task name is manage auto accounting rules. Click on go to task icon. So just click on task. Then here we have manage auto accounting rules. Click on go to task icon. So click on create. So since we know in auto accounting in EBS and all, I'm not going to take you through the very detailed explanation. Like it's a beginner base and all. So just I'm taking through how that can be done here. That's all. Okay, Fusion US business unit. And here we have a different types. Now the basic types I'm going to set. One is receivables, other one is revenue, which are very basic to create the transaction receivables. I'll select account type as receivables. So we know like when you create transaction, receivables will get debited. When system is debiting receivables, which company it has to take, okay, which department, which account it has to take when you're recording the transaction for this business unit, that we have to set. Here we have a two options. One is value source, other one is constant value. In case of EBS, we'll see this label name as a table based on the constant, but here the table they're given as a value source. Okay, I'll just go and set constant values. If you want to set source based, here we have these are the different sources we know. Transaction type, sales representative, and site. We know like memo lines and all system will be defaulting only in case of revenue selection. Account type is revenue, right? So anyway, this transaction type level we didn't provide accounts and all, so we'll go with the constant, which is simple tool to testing. Okay, I'll select system has to take the company as 1,000 and department, the finance department account. Select receivables account. It's account only, right? Why it is not displaying? So here we have it two values, but just make sure that at the time of reconciliation we have to use the same. So I'm just going to take not accounts receivables. I'm going to take accounts receivable. Just this we have to make a note. Otherwise, just if you do the reconciliation related status for a different value, if you try with other, it won't work. So I'm using the accounts receivable as a receivables account. Done. Now say create another. Now we'll just set up this auto accounting rules for account type called as revenue. Just we are going to set constant values for revenue code combination which department account system has to take in case of Fusion US business unit. So we know very well, right, from how to derive from the source. Again, that will become separate setup with so time taking and all. That's the reason I'm not going through that. So just I'm taking the constant values. Fine. Select this revenue account.
Lakshman, there was the unearned revenue.
That is unearned revenue. That's the reason I'm not selecting. Unearned is different.
Okay.
But anyway, we can take any account. It's a sales revenue or consulting related revenue. That unearned is it's different. It comes into revenue recognition. I'm not. That's the reason I'm not selecting. Okay, I'll take this simple one. Okay, revenue, domestic revenue. I searched with the four. There was constant value, but it's not coming. Okay, no issues. So something just I'm selecting domestic revenue account. Now say done. Okay, this account type rules are enough. Later we'll just when you are working on revenue recognition, we'll come and set for the rules called as unbilled receivables and unearned revenue. For those also we'll be setting the auto accounting rules. For now, just to process this transaction process, these two are enough. Just say done. Click on done. So these two are created. You can see. Okay, done. Now say save and close. This is a very basic auto accounting configuration to work on the transaction process. Done. Now we'll create the payment terms. There will be task called as receivables payment terms. Okay, manage receivables payment terms. Just click on this. So this is the task, manage receivables payment terms. Click on go to task icon. And click on create. So for here also for payment terms we have reference data set. Wherever you see term called as set, that is nothing but reference data set that we have for which object. Based on the object name also just they're mentioning as a label name. That's all. So let's go with the common set. You can type directly here. I'll say give here Fusion immediate. It's not taking more than that. Fine. So discount basis, if you are going to give discount on what base, invoice amount base. And there here I'll say installment options. In case of installments, I'll say include tax and freight in the first installment. And the payment schedule, you can set the payment schedules here. So by default here one schedule the system is creating. Only what we have to do is just place the cursor in the days. Click on this field, place cursor, it will open. Then say since it's immediate, you have to set days to 0. Since immediate discount is not applicable, if it is not immediate payment term, here from here you can set the discount terms. Okay, multiple levels you can set the discounts. Even EBS also. In payables only 3 levels discounts, but in receivables multiple levels. When Fusion also same rule is applicable. Okay. So done. Then say save and close. In the same way you can create a number of payment terms as per requirement, but just this is one enough for us for our testing purpose. Okay, we're done with the payment terms. Now we'll go and create the statement cycles. So task name would be as manage statement cycles. Just click on go to task icon. Click on create. So you can give the name and say Fusion monthly statement cycle. Intervals I'm going to select as a monthly. Description also monthly cycle. And here for which business unit, what are the dates you can specify as a monthly. Click on add row. Select your business unit. Fusion US business unit and statement date and which date you want to generate the statement. So we'll say like every month first. To 70 directly you can enter add here. Okay. Feb. Okay, first 17. So this is how just you can define, and if you want to skip any one of the cycle generation and all statement cycle generation, you can enable skip. Then accordingly it won't allow us to create the statements on by following that respective cycle. Okay, just this is how just you can define what is the frequency you are going to define the cycles and the statements. Accordingly you can define the statement cycle. Then say save and close. We given the name as Fusion monthly. Done with this collector definition, which is simple task. Go and search for collectors. So manage collectors. Task name is manage collectors. Click on go to task icon. So I'll just click on add row. So it seems to there is a network issue. We'll redo this. Click on go to task icon. Then click on add. So the collector name I'll give as a Fusion collector. Employer group. So I'll just, this collector is I'll say our employee only, employee name is Fusion. Collector set, that also you can select as a common set. Nothing but reference data set. So that's how you can create one or multiple collectors. Now we'll create the customer profile class by grouping this payment term, statement cycle, and the collector. If you have some other definition, those also can take into that. Say customer profile class. So the task name is manage receivables customer profile classes. Okay, click on this. Just let me drag a little right. Yep. So this is the actual task name, manage receivables customer profile classes. Click on go to task icon. And click on create. I'll give the profile class. We know like we can create different profile classes. It's all about grouping the suppliers based on the profile of the customers, right? Based on the profile of the customers, you can create the customer profile classes. Maybe you may have profile class as something good customer profile class, or bad customer profile class, or average customer profile class, or else based on your business, how you are running and how you want to classify the customer, accordingly you may have customer profile classes. Now I'm going to create profile class called as Fusion Standard. Okay, just select provide mandatory fields. Here collector name is Fusion collector. And here you can view payment terms what we define, so that will be mapped with the customer, and when you create the transaction the same will get defaulted. So Fusion immediate payment term. If you don't need the statements and all, you can uncheck that. You can uncheck. If you want to send the statements, then only you can enable, and you can select what statement cycle you want to follow. Fusion monthly. Just optionally you can specify this, but anyway it's auto invoice we are not going to generate since there is no OEM configuration. Grouping rule default, I'm just setting up. Done. Okay, and go to late charges tab and all. Here you may specify this customer profile class we are going to use for which currency related process. I'm going to set for USD. Then say save and close. So done. So now customer profile class is ready. Now we can create the customer and customer address, or call it as site. However, supplier site got the purpose of purchasing site and payment site in the same way. Customer site also got different purposes, but primary site purposes are ship to and bill to. The same will be defining. So to create the supplier, we have to assign the roles. To create the supplier definition, from specific user we have to assign the supplier related roles, but to create the customer we no need to assign any roles. Okay, this task will be part of the project only, no need to assign any roles for customer definition. If you want to create the customer, okay, just let me mark it, we done with this. If you want to create the customer, yeah, a customer, you can go and create it directly from the project, but when you're creating the site, we'll have a challenge of selecting the reference data set which is specific to our BU. So for that reason, what we'll do is, before we start with the customer definition, we'll create one reference data set for our BU for customer sites. Okay, for customer site definition purpose, we'll create one reference data set for our BU by referring this is for customer site definition, and then we can start with the customer definition and the site definition. Okay, let's go and create the reference data set for customer site. We know very well how to create the reference data set. Already we created in payables for payment terms. Same process. Just search for reference data set. Search for reference data set. Then just go to this task, and here click on go to task icon, manage reference data sets. Click on go to task icon. Say create. I'll say customer site. I'll give the name like this. Fusion US VU customer site. Okay, let's say save and close. Now we can create the customer and site. For site purpose only, just now we created reference data set. Okay, done. Now we'll go and create the customer. Directly customer you can create from project. You can search for customer. Select the task called as create customer. There will be a task called as create customer. I'll search for that. So create customer. Fine. So create customer. And click on go to task icon. So customer types can be organization or person. So just give me 1 second. I'm getting some call. So we'll give the name as, okay, we'll give the name as Fusion customer 1. Okay, and here account number and everything system is taking. See here we have to give the address for the customer. So when you try to provide the address, so here reference data sets you can see, but you don't find common set or enterprise set. Only whatever we create which are not seeded, those only you can find here. These all are created by other users. For our business unit also, we created one reference data set that is nothing but Fusion. Okay, Fusion US business unit for customer site. So select it, save. Now you have to provide the detail address, but when you look at this address, no field you see as a mandatory, but you have to provide the complete information. Otherwise, when you are working on certain concepts, let me take simple example. When you are doing the customer refund, in that case you don't find the customer address if you provide very kind of incomplete information. If I just give the name as something like this, I'll just say, okay, I'll write it here. Fusion customer address. I'll write it. Then I can save and close it. No issues. System will accept. But when we are working on customer refund and some other concepts, what happens is this address won't be visible from LOV because you are providing just very basic information where the system will treat as incomplete definition of address. So that's the reason you just try to provide max for which fields you can provide the data. Just I'm filling all this. Here you can select the city. Okay, so that's all. And here you can provide this address purposes, nothing but site purposes. You just click on, see here, address purposes. Click on add. I'll say this is ship to. And I'll go with this is a bill to. The same address I'm taking for ship to and bill to. Now we have to do the mapping between these two. When you say ship to, this is if this is ship to, what is the bill to address? That's the specification you have to give here. The same address. Okay. Now say save and close. So we created a customer and a customer address. For the address we given the purpose as a ship to and bill to also. Now we have to assign customer profile class to the customer account level as well as site level. Just we given the customer information, site information. Now system will create the three records. One is customer definition, other one is account. Customer account it will create, account record also it will create, other record is customer address or site address, site record. Three records it will create. And account level as well as site level we have to assign customer profile class. So customer created and the site is created. Now we have to assign customer profile class to customer account and site. Then this is a just customer is created. Now you can search for the customer. Organization name is Fusion Customer 1. Fusion customer, this is a customer definition, and this is a customer account record. This is customer sites. First we'll go to the account. So click on account number. Just click on customer account number. In the account, once you open that account, within that you can find the tab called as profile history. Select profile history tab. Okay, select profile history tab. Here you can see system is taking the default. By default there will be one profile class, the name called as default. The system is defaulting, but now we have to override. How to override this? So here also you cannot change anything. Okay, so select it, go to actions, say correct record, say correct record. Okay, now here you can change it, change to Fusion Standard, say yes. Now change to Fusion Standard, say save and close. So account level we changed customer profile class. Now we'll go to the site, and site level also will override. Click on site number. Go to profile history. Already had a just a customer level we assigned. To just default to here, just click on create site profile. System is defaulting. Okay, just click on that, it will default. Save and close. You should do this action. Okay, so site level also we done that. Then say save and close. Now customer definition is completed. Now we'll create the remit address. Okay, so it's nothing but supplier address where customer has to send the payments. Just search for remit address. Task name is manage remit addresses. Okay, manage remit addresses. Click on go to task icon. Click on create. So here also set for grouping purpose, address grouping purpose. Just I'm going to select common only, but you can type directly here, it will fetch. Common set. Give that. Select city and postal code and say save and close. Now search and find the same country. There may be multiple remit address definitions for US. This environment, just search for it. Then click on go. You can find whatever the record you created. This is the one which we created, right? Fusion US. Select it. Now you can specify this is the location where we collect the payments, but the payments will be collecting from which countries or which counties or states that we can specify here. Select your remit address. Specify receipts will be receiving from where. Receipt from criteria. From which countries will get the payments to this location. So we'll get the payments from US only. You want to specify from US we get the payments, that too from specific site. State means we can give the state, otherwise not required. So simple. Just our remit to address is US, and even we have a customers also within the US will be receiving the payments to that remit to address only from country called as US. That's all. So save and close. So many other definitions are defined in the same way. So just let's save and close. Then click on done. Completed. Okay, now we'll create the memo lines. So already we discussed what is the purpose of memo lines. For non-inventory items we use memo line. Just simple example is services. Okay, so the purpose why we use memo lines is to define the services. When you are providing the services to the customer, you have to include which service you are providing in the transaction. For that reason we'll create. If you want to create a accounting based on the memo line also, yes, we can set it up. For that reason we have to provide the revenue account at memo line definition level, and the same need to be specified at auto accounting, where system has to derive the revenue account from memo line. The concept same as EBS, but let's go and define these memo lines. Okay, see, memo lines are standard memo lines or standard lines, all are same, right? We know that. Just Task name is manage standard memo lines. Here is the task, then click on go to task icon. Click on create. I'll take into common set. I'll just give the service name as Oracle Fusion Financials Training. And this memo line I want to assign to US business unit. Just click on assign service business unit. And if you want to derive the accounting revenue account from memo line, in that case you have to give the revenue account here, otherwise not required. Just save and close. And the same you can create multiple memo lines as per requirement. Said done, completed. Okay, receivable activities. So when we are creating the methods within the receipt class, we'll create the receipt methods, or you can call as customer payment methods. Okay, when we are creating the method, as a part of method definition, we require receivable activities. Which activities we require this? I mean, for which activities this definition is mandatory. Okay, for when you are creating the receipt methods, we have two activities. One is on discount and unearned discount. Say on discount, other one is unearned discount. What is the meaning of these terms? So you may offer the discount to your customer, but there are two cases, general cases you can consider. One is, say you are offering the discount to the customer, saying that if customer is going to pay within the, say you have customer has to pay within 10 days. If customer is going to pay within 10 days, that means the payment will fall into the discount term, so we'll be giving the discount. There will be some cases where after discount terms also, say customer has to pay within 10 days to avail the discount, but customer is paying after 10 days. In that case also you can give the discount, which we call as unearned discount. Within the discount terms, if customer is paying, whatever the discount will give, that we call as the earned discount. After discount terms also, whatever the discount will give to the customer, that we call as unearned discount. So to capture these two activities related accounts, we have to create two receivable activities. Okay, when you talk about EBS, if you want to create the receivable activities, it is a mandatory you have to create the party tax profile in the EBT, e-business tax. Okay, since there will be some tax related reference within the receivable activities also. Through receivable activities, you can provide the tax related reference information mapping you can do. That's the reason they linked this receivable activity definition with e-business tax. But in the fusion, to create the receivable activities, it is not mandatory to go on to create the party tax profile for specific business unit. Straight away, you can go and create the receivable activity in receivables without creating the party tax profile for specific BU. Okay, this is the point we have to understand. Now we are going to create two receivable activities. One is on discount receivable activity, other one is unearned discount receivable activity. Let's go and do it. Okay, just search for receivables activities. So task name is manage receivables activities. Click on go to task icon. Our BU is not coming here. I'm sorry, really sorry. I'm just searching for our BU. We have to click on create. That is search option. Okay, select your business unit. Fusion US business unit. Name is, I'll just put prefix for everything as Fusion. So on discount. Okay, GL account sources activity GL account, everything is fine. Here activity type is on discount. Select receivable activity type as a on discount. Here we have activity type as on discount, and here you can provide the on discount account. This field is not displaying. With advanced and research. Okay. No issues, just basically we have to provide here. The search function is not at all
Lakshman,
working.
choose the description, not the value.
Okay, sorry, yeah. I'm sorry. These are the mistakes. Thank you. Discount. Great. So I'm really sorry, I was searching with value. So discount, here we have to take discount earned. Say okay. Then here say save and create another. Select your business unit. Say fusion unknown. Unknown discount. Just I'll copy and paste. Select unearned discount. just provide the account. Discount. So discounts they given. So discounts on. Okay, done. We completed this task. Setup. Okay. The receipt class and methods we have to create. So when this, we'll see tomorrow session then. It's already 9. Maybe few people has to leave to their work. So receipt class, methods, and receipt source and other definitions we'll see. Tomorrow session will start with the transaction process also. Okay. We'll start working on these all one by one. So any questions on today's session, please? Okay, done. Seems to no questions then.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. This is Mahir.
Mahida, tell me.
Sir, while creating the purchase order, we need to define the buyer, sir.
No. To create the purchase order. Yeah. So before you start with the purchasing application, you says assign buyer role to your user.
Okay.
Okay. If you don't,
Sir, for that, we need to do some setups, sir.
no setup required.
We
No.
took all.
No, you already
Okay.
created buyer. You already created procurement agent. Procurement agent is nothing but a buyer. In EBS, what we do, we'll add the employee in the buyer list. That is nothing but buyer definition, right? Here equal to that.
Yes, sir.
Here we have a procurement agent definition that already we completed. Apart from that, okay. Apart from that, what we have to do, we have to assign the role called as buyer role to user. Okay, buyer role to the user. You know how to assign the roles to user, right? Same process you can follow, and just go and search for buyer, assign that buyer role to the user, then you can start working on purchasing. Before that, we assign some other roles also which are related to procurement and purchasing. With that naming convention, we have a roles we assign. Apart from that, assign one more role called as buyer role to your user from IDM. That's it. Then you can start working on purchasing. You can create the purchase orders, you can process. Fine. Any other questions? Fine, then no questions seems to. And then see you tomorrow. Have a good day and good night. Thank you.